I got to go to the Dali Epikore release line event at Park Audio in New York City. At this event, they were releasing the Epikore 9, the 7, and the 3 alongside the already released Epikore 11. And they also had their flagship core speaker on display and all hooked up for this event. Now, the event was from 2 to 4. I was to fly out at 7:45 that night. So, right after the event, I had to, jump on the train to Jersey and then fly out from there. And then, incidentally, my flight was delayed by 3 hours. But because of this, I spent all of my time trying to get footage on the Epikore speakers. I didn't get a chance to listen to the core speakers. But, I mean, those speakers were released in 2022. It's just more selfishly, I just want to hear what does the flagship sound like. This is the third event that I've gotten to go to, and as a non-seasoned videographer, I realized very quickly that I need to start bringing lights with me as well as a camera and a microphone just to properly light all the people that I'm shooting because, as you'll see, it's not well lit. Park Audio is an amazing looking space though. Every room, and it's a huge space, but every room feels like a cozy room in a home, and you just want to sit in all of the rooms and just listen to music for hours. And starting things off with Jason Zidle, brand manager at the Lenbrook Group of Companies, representing Dali at this event, giving me a breakdown on Dali, the company itself, and some of the Epikore speakers that were announced at this event. So I am here with
Jason Zidle, the original Jay-Z brand manager of Dali North America.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem. So I just got intro to these wonderful speakers.
Aren't they wonderful?
But you were telling me about the different ranges of Dali.
Mm-hmm.
Without getting too much into the weeds, is there so this is second from the top?
It is. This event that we're at right now at Park Avenue Audio in New York City and soon to be at Simply Stereo in Chicago. Mm-hmm. This is the culmination of a 3-year plan that started with Core, the big, mighty, the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight champ of the speaker industry. Yeah. And the reason a company does a model like that is, well, of course you want to sell it and say you have something really cool out there. But when you do something like that, it's all about what you learn from the research and development and figure out how to bring it down through the line. So 2022, we saw Core. 2023, we saw Epikore 11, the first model of the Epikore series. And now 2024, they have released Epikore and Rubikore. And as you detect from that last syllable there, Core, all trickle-down technology of what they learned at Core.
Okay. These are, I guess, more for you have it's almost cost no object, but they're made for a much larger room, right?
You know, I would know, not sure if I would say necessarily a larger room, but definitely finer electronics.
Yes.
You know, they definitely can fill a large room. Dali is really room-friendly and easy to place. But something like the Epikore 11, it does want some elbow room. It definitely appreciates a big room, but really just so you can appreciate this giant, magnificent soundstage. But they're very room-friendly, and they don't necessarily need a large room. But for hobbyists, and let's face it, this is a hobbyist kind of speaker.
Oh, for sure.
For the people that want, to get the best out of every level, this series is really something that allows you to hook it up to, the highest end technology and really appreciate every link in that chain.
Now, is this a stereo-only line, or is there also a center and a subwoofer and sounds?
That's a great question, and the long answer, the short answer is yes. The long answer, I hope, is maybe no. Okay. They are just pairs of speakers at the moment, but the response has been really overwhelming, and a lot of people have said, I'd love to use this in a home theater system. Yeah. So if I was looking into a crystal ball, it wouldn't surprise me if they came out with a center channel somewhere down the line. Yeah. But for now, they have started with towers and bookshelves. Great question.
But you could, I guess, conceivably go with the 11s as your front, left, and right, and then maybe for your center, you can go, is it the 9?
That is the 9 right
So you could like put the 9 behind a screen potentially, right?
You absolutely could. It's a great question. My answer to it was a lot of these processors will also have 2 outputs sometimes for center channels.
Yeah.
So I've said, hey, maybe just use a pair of the 3s. Space them out just a little bit, have that behind the wall,
Yeah.
and that's a really nice way to go. A lot of this technology is actually available in their Phantom series, which is the CI series.
Okay.
And if you don't want to make a very invasive cut, they make an on-wall bracket. So they have a monster called the S280, about 5 feet tall, 2 feet wide,
Yeah.
and that would really make a fantastic center channel and would allow you to put it right behind an acoustically transparent screen.
But it would almost be a waste putting these behind the screen.
You kind of want to see them, don't you? I mean, there's a certain amount of bragging rights to a speaker like this.
I think so.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you know, if a purist were going to ask me the question, that's probably what I would say.
Now, they had a pair of the Epikore 11 and the Epikore 9 set up in a really cozy room, and I got to sit down with Thomas Holm Peterson, Senior Product Specialist at Dali, for an extended period of time where he gave me a very extensive technical breakdown of the manufacture of these speakers, why they use the certain drivers they did, how those drivers work together, what materials are in the speakers, pretty much everything. And if a big technical breakdown is something that you fancy, I encourage you to watch or at least listen to the whole thing because it's rather insightful.
So, hi, my name is Thomas Holm from Dali Loudspeakers. Came over here from Denmark to visit Park Avenue Audio here in New York City. So today we're introducing our brand new Dali Epikore high-end loudspeakers. 2 years ago we introduced the Dali Core, which is the flagship of Dali loudspeakers. A year after that we introduced the Epikore 11, which was the first of the Epikore series, and this year we are introducing the rest of the series. So Epikore 9, Epikore 7 and Epikore 3 is following along the footsteps of the big Epikore 11. So now we have 4 models offering core quality into a little bit smaller rooms, smaller footprints, and a little bit of a different wallet size as well.
Awesome. What is it about Core? Core is the highest end?
Yeah, so the Dali Core is the flagship speaker of Dali, which is pretty much showcasing what Dali is in a nutshell, if everything in terms of restrictions is taken away. So it's the kind of the effortless Dali speaker. Mm-hmm. No restrictions on budget or time spent in developing. So the Core is very large. The Core is a 4.5-way speaker system using 2 11.5-inch woofers, a 7-inch dedicated mid-range, and our Evo K hybrid tweeter section, which is actually the exact same tweeter section that we're using in the new Epikore series as well.
And so the tweeter section, so there's like a soft dome and is that?
That's a planar magnetostatic tweeter.
Okay.
We call this the hybrid tweeter. In this case, it's the Evo K, the Evolution Core hybrid tweeter, which is consisting of a soft dome tweeter and a planar magnetostatic tweeter. So the reason why we use these two is because we like to use the best of both worlds, meaning that soft domes are really, really good at going downwards in frequency where they overlap to the mid-range. They're very easy to drive for the amplifier and have a very high power handling also downwards in frequency.
Yeah.
In this case, it's a newly developed soft dome tweeter, oversized 35mm dome without any ferrofluid oil in the magnet gap. So it's extremely low loss, which is a basic sound design principle of Dali loudspeakers. We do low loss speakers. The only disadvantage with a dome tweeter of any type is that when we go upwards in frequency, it loses its dispersion and gets more directional. We also have a wide dispersion sound design principle. We like to optimize our speakers for the best reproduction from around 10 to 30 degrees off-axis listening, which will give us, when it works, a better uniform coverage of energy in the room, in the horizontal plane, so that more people can benefit.
Yes.
And just when this soft dome begins to roll off and lose its dispersion, we roll in the planar tweeter. And the planar tweeter is very good at keeping a wide dispersion upwards in frequency, which means that all the way from around 34,000 hertz and down to around 2 kilohertz when mid-range takes over, we have the exact same dispersion all the way through, which gives us a very holographic, three-dimensional, extremely transparent tweeter reproduction. So it is, in our view, we use the best of both worlds to create the perfect tweeter section.
And do the tweeters, do they cross over at the same point per speaker, or
Yes,
are they different?
it's the same per speaker.
Okay.
It's a two-way system. We use these downwards in our series as well, in the Epicon, in the Rubicore.
Yes.
And in some cases, it's a 1.5-way system. In this instance, where we use this dome, it's because the sensitivity is so high on these guys, we had to screen them a little bit to each other in order to make them have a seamless transition and work perfectly together. So in this case, the Evo K is a two-way system. So in the case of a speaker like this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 ways.
Okay.
We like to use these halfway designs because it enables us to do softer slopes on the crossovers, simpler crossovers, which make the drivers coexist better. So we roll them into each other. That's something that we can only do because we develop all our drivers ourselves. So we can actually, in development, make them play along with each other instead of having to screen them from each other.
Yes.
So it's a very holistic way of looking at a speaker design where we see, in case of this 4-way speaker, we see that as a 1-way speaker. We want the bass drivers and the tweeter section to be extensions of the mid-range rather than just being bass drivers or tweeter sections.
Okay.
So that's very important for us, that we get perfect timing and perfect coherence throughout the design.
And what about the mid and bass drivers? I noticed there's aside from the interesting color that's used across Dali speakers, it looks like there's a texture to them?
Yes. So we've been using this material since, 20 years or so. This is a paper and wood fiber cone. So it's a paper cone with larger wood fibers put into it at random places, which means that the surface of the driver gets randomized, which helps to suppress standing waves or resonance on the driver.
Okay.
Good thing about paper in itself is that it's very low resonance to begin with. It's extremely easy to drive because it's very light. And we have a low loss sound design principle, so that's good.
Yes.
It makes it much easier for the amplifier to drive the speaker back and forth. And because it's made of paper and not a uniform material, it doesn't ring. So it doesn't have a high-pitched resonance frequency. It has a very high self-control, very good dampening on its own.
Yes.
So we don't need to add a lot of dampening material to get it to work, which again lowers the losses because dampening material adds weight and weight adds losses.
Okay.
So what we found out in this material that we love to use and been using for many years is that, of course, there will always be a little bit of resonance.
Yes.
All materials have some sort of resonance. So by doing this structure in the mid-range, we call this the clarity cone. It's a 5-point structure, which gets stamped into the paper cone, and then we coat the paper cone with the coating that we normally use.
Yeah.
Very, very thin layer of acoustic glue. And when we use this, let's call it stamped out form, some of the coating will gather itself a little bit more in these indents than on the rest of the driver, on the flat places of the driver, which makes these points a little bit better dampened. Okay. Well, these points on the driver is where the resonance has a tendency to build up. So by doing the structure, adding the coating, we get perfect dampening just where the resonance is. But the main thing is low losses. We don't add any extra gram of weight compared to what we do normally. So it's just by changing the form of the cone that we can get better properties.
Okay. And you mentioned dampening. Is there anything inside the speaker of notes that we can't see?
Well, in these Epikore models, we do on the insides of this MDF cabinet, we use bitumen pads. So the walls have been coated with bitumen, which is a lead rubber material, which is very, very inert. So it keeps the panel resonances down.
Okay.
Other than that, we actually believe that padding should be used very carefully, because throughout the speaker design, we don't want any losses. Not electrically, not mechanically, and certainly not losses in terms of speed and compression in terms of sound pressure. And what we found out is that if you add too much dampening inside the cabinet and too much stiffening in all directions, you can hinder the airflow of the cabinet, which means that from the back of the driver to the base port entrance, you can have restrictions of the airflow. So by being very careful on using dampening, the correct places, and optimizing for airflow, you can get the base ports, the base reflex ports, and the base drivers to have perfect timing with each other, which makes them, be invisible. It just sounds like they're going further down in frequency, but it doesn't add boominess or doesn't add port turbulence or that. So it's very, very, very clean.
And per speaker, are there multiple bass ports?
Yes, we use 2 base ports per speaker. So in the big ones here, in the 11s, we're using, and I think I remember correctly, 2 times 64-liter cabinets for the bass drivers. In these ones, they're a little bit smaller, but the bass drivers are sitting in their own cabinets, and the mid-range as well is sitting in its own cabinet, which means that we can optimize the bass port and the driver to coexist in that cabinet space.
Okay.
One other thing we used for these ones, which is also new, is that we use what we call continuous flare ports, which is a bass tube that has no parallel lines throughout the length of the tube. It's difficult to do, but it's a
Yes.
it's a
I'm sure
continuous
there's a
flare.
diagram online.
Yeah. So that means that you don't have any parallel lines, so you have very low buildup of port turbulence, and essentially you want the port to act as an extension of the bass driver, but you don't want it to make any noise of its own.
Yes.
And a linear port, straight port, is a very unlinear driver. Actually, when we do the continuous flare, it becomes much more linear. It has much better behavior. To put it in simple terms, if you were to build a church organ out of continuous flare ports, they wouldn't make a sound because they don't have any resonance in the tube.
Okay.
So by doing that, we can get much better extension in the bass, much cleaner. Actually, sounds like it doesn't have a port. Yeah. The secret sauces that we have at Dali that is invisible to the eye is the magnet material that we use inside speaker drivers. So in the magnet system of the drivers, we use something called SMC, which is soft magnetic composite. It's a magnet material that we use to replace the iron parts that you normally use in a speaker driver, because what happens when you have a voice coil that moves very closely to parts of something that's electrically conducting, like iron, some of that magnetic field will be induced into the iron and create eddy currents, which is reversely positioned magnetic fields. So, which means that if you've tried to move your hand in water, if you move it very slowly, there's no restriction. The faster you want to move it, the more the water tries to restrict the movement, because you're generating eddy currents around your hand. Same thing happens, electrically in the speaker. So the magnetic field of the coil creates eddy currents in the iron, because the iron is electrically conductive, and that creates a braking effect on the movement of the voice coil in the driver, which creates lots of nasty, grainy distortion. So we have a patent on a material called SMC, which replaces the iron parts, the critical iron parts closest to the coil. And that is, in this case, 25,000 times less electrically conductive than any iron material. So that means all of these braking effects, all of these unlinear, nasty distortions, they're gone. They're, 20 decibels lower than any driver with iron in it. So that's something that's difficult to explain, but really something that's part of the Dali sound. It makes the speaker disappear and be extremely transparent and very, very dynamic, and especially at low levels as well.
And now, is this tech exclusive to these and the...
It's actually something we use throughout our ranges, but in different, let's say, quantities. So in the Epikore and the core, it's full-blown. We use the entire pole piece inside the coil of SMC. We use rings around the magnet gap, so everything that's closest to the coil gets replaced by SMC. If we go down to Oberon, which is $200 speaker, we use a small coin of SMC just in the magnet gap, just where it's most important. But even by doing that, we can reduce distortion by 10, 12 dB. compared to an iron-based driver. So we talk a lot about distortion because we're good at removing it, but distortion is not the only thing that's good about a good speaker design. We like to have low distortion to begin with because it makes it much easier to design the driver with perfect timing, good, dispersion, all the things that we like. Gets much easier if it has low distortion to begin with. So we like to have clarity in our speakers, also low distortion and very good wide dispersion, but especially timing is extremely important for us. So like we talked about before, when we design drivers that has a large bandwidth, we can get them to coexist. So even though these bass drivers, they're used up to around 400 Hertz, they're linear to way beyond 1 kilohertz, just to make sure that they don't mess up anything when we roll them into the mid-range. They'll have a lot of output at 800 Hertz, but it's very, it's very low in energy, but it still has output there. And if that is distorting, the mid-range will suffer from it. So in our case, we like to say that the best speaker in the world is one big mid-range. We just try to use more drivers to make that mid-range bigger. If that makes any sense.
That makes tons of sense. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes.
In another room, they had the Epikore 7 and the Epikore 3 on display. And I got to hear both, but the 3, the smallest of them, it's like a 3-way stand mount speaker. And it's set up in a fairly large room, like much larger than my entire space here, like my condo. But I say this a lot, but these sound massive. Bigger than I would expect a 3-way stand mount speaker to sound. And they had a JL audio sub hooked up, and I walked up and touched the sub driver just to see if it was doing anything, if I was being tricked. And it clearly wasn't connected or turned on. But oh man, like a 3-way stand mount speaker sounding that massive. I will post some clips to my Instagram, 0102 Studio, so that you can see some of the songs I was playing. No, they're not audiophile test tracks. It's just drum and bass and dubstep. That's what I listen to most of the time. And that's what I ran on these speakers. Now, the Epikore series is Dali's near cost no object speaker lineup. Their absolute craziest speaker is the Core, and that retails for $120,000 US. The Epikore 11 is $60,000. The Epikore 9 is $40,000. The Epikore 7 is $25,000, and the Epikore 3 is $15,000 US. They also make a stand for it, and that retails for $3,000 US. New York City, I wouldn't have thought it, but like this time around and the last time when I went to Focal, everyone was just really nice. And Dennis from Park Audio is maybe the nicest of all. Like if you have a chance and you're in New York City, go and visit Park Audio. It is, let me pull out the card. It is 4040 Park Avenue South at 30th Street. Google map that. But he is maybe the most engaging owner of a hi-fi store I've ever met. I could talk to that guy for hours. And that store, every room is staged like a really cool room in your house, and you want to just sit there and listen to music for hours. And fortunately, Dennis will just talk to you. If I could find a way to find myself back in New York City again, I'm going to book a day at Park Audio, and I'm going to talk to Dennis. I feel like everyone else should meet him. Cool guy. Who are you? What do you do? Where are we?
So my name is Dennis Zidle. I'm the owner of Park Avenue Audio. It's been in my family for over 55 years. I'm a third generation of this business. Our new location is 440 Park Avenue South. We've been here now 15 years. We have over 10,000 square feet of audio and video. It's what we love. It's our passion. It's what we do. Please come by and visit us. I'm more than happy to help you. We're here Monday through Friday, 10:30 to 5:30. If you need to come later, just let us know. I'm more than happy to stay and wait for you. So whatever we can do service-wise or help, please reach out to us. I'm more than happy to.
And the most important question,
Yes.
what's your favorite song? And then if you're outside during the summer, you're barbecuing, what are you listening to? So 2 different songs.
There's a group that's very rare. It's called London Grammar.
I love them.
And they have a song called Hey Now, which I really like a lot. And I'm a big Who fan.
Nice.
So the mixture is from A to Z.
Yeah.
but I'm very passionate in all of music.
Awesome.
It's just a matter of finding out what sounds best. And I love hearing what clients bring in to listen to. Sometimes I find something that's like a sleeper to me, and I'm like, I never heard that before. This is something I would really love to listen to. Next thing you know, it's on my list, and it becomes one of my favorites. So I learn a lot too myself sometimes. Sometimes it's not just, I don't know everything. So I try to learn also from my clients. So that's one of the things I enjoy, working with good people and selling them systems that they really have a passion for and love, and teaching them. And service is also another thing that we do.
Yeah.
We do a lot of service, meaning if something doesn't work right or you need something, even if we didn't sell it to you, we're still here for you. Okay. So that's why we've been around so long. And we care.
Awesome.
We just love what we do. So if you reach out anytime, any questions, email us. More than happy to help you.
100%. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Special thank you to the folks at Dali, the Lenbrook Group of Companies, and Park Audio for having me down for this event. It was much appreciated. And also, thank you to everyone for letting me just slam a whole bunch of drum and bass through the Epikore 11s for an extended period of time. That was awesome.